Okay, we're back. So MyITLab is an important part of our course. If you remember from my welcome video, it takes up 30% of your grade, meaning it makes up, not takes up, well, takes up, same word, same concept. It makes up 30% of your grade. So it's an important part of our class. It's an important part to get working, to purchase, right? And I talked about the purchase already, so if you want to refer back to the welcome video about how to purchase, that would be great. But do know that there's two ways to get it. Fresno bookstore, Fresno City bookstore, or you can also get it directly from the publisher. So what I'm going to walk you through is really just the process. Honestly, there is been a little bit, and let me just switch to the screen real quick, a little bit a setup that still has to happen with MyITLab and our courses. But in general, here's what happens. When you're ready to get started with MyITLab, which might actually be good to answer this question as we get here. Okay, so let's actually answer this as when do you need MyITLab, right? So when do you think, or where would you find that information on our course? And the answer would be probably right here in the tentative schedule, right? So in the tentative schedule, if you look, right, so we're still working on week 1 classwork. You will have a hands-on assignment. In week 2, you'll have hands-on and a classwork on the same day, and then you'll have on the second Monday of the semester, your first MyITLab item and Chapter 1 quiz. So really what that says is that's when you need the materials, okay? So that's when you need to make sure you've planned. Now MyITLab does give a 14-day trial, and you definitely want to take advantage of that if you need a little more time getting your books. But as I've said before, this is a required part of this course, okay? So moving back here, so when you're ready to purchase, now again, if you've purchased from the bookstore, you'll already have a code. If you've purchased from MyITLab, this will be the way you do it, okay? You'll click on MyITLab, and then you'll click on here, and inside of here you'll actually click on one of these options to take you through the process of actually getting into the MyITLab course, okay? So again, I can't walk through it here, but it's pretty straightforward. You fill out some information, and then at that point it actually gives you on the bottom screen the option to do the 14-day trial, so look for that towards the bottom of the screen when you're doing it. So once you're complete with the process, here's what you end up getting to is the MyITLab course. So even though they're connected, they're separate systems. And what happens is that when you do work in MyITLab, every 90 minutes that information is published over into Blackboard. It used to be in the past my students had to do print screens to show they had done the work, but no longer. You actually do the work in MyITLab, and then it publishes in the Blackboard, again, every 90 minutes or so, okay? So what is the work we're doing here? Well, I'll come back to textbook in a minute because that should kind of start to make a little more sense if you think about the fact that I talked about the textbook, the ebook is in MyITLab. But I talked about that we're going to do Word, Excel, and Access. Now I have provided PowerPoint here, although it's not a required part of our course. I definitely recommend if you want to learn PowerPoint, you use this as well. And then Visual Basic we'll do in one of our classes. And then the exams, these are the lab exams. So let's start up here at Word. Okay, if I come into Word, there's two things. There's training and there's assessments. Okay, so remember, you're still working on week 1 classwork. You should be taking notes on the stuff that I'm talking about. Most importantly right here is in MyITLab, there are training and assessments, right? So here's what you're going to know. Trainings are not required. Assessments are, and they are the ones that publish in the Blackboard, okay? Now, I do offer, and I'll talk about this in a later video, benefits to doing the MyITLab stuff. And we'll talk about this when we get to late work, because if you submit things late, there's a penalty, and there's a way that if you're doing the trainings, you actually get points back on your late work, okay? So, but going back here, trainings, basically, it's basically the same thing, okay? You have a training, and I'm going to just go ahead and click on this because, by the way, let's just open it. So it opens in a browser, of course, here. And there is a setup that, especially for those of you online, I recommend you, if you're having any problems with Blackboard or with a MyITLab, that you check that out, okay? So this is the training, and there's something called learning aids, and it gives you the ability to read about it, watch about it, or practice. Some students I found like watch, some like practice, both work well, okay? But so you will then do whatever it's instructing you to do. Notice this is, if you don't know, Windows 8. So this is simulating, right? So this is simulating Windows 8. This is not Windows 8, it's just simulating the environment. Now what this means is that it also works on Macs. I had students over the summer do MyITLab on Macs, and we actually ended up finding out some cool things about the keyboard and how equivalent keystrokes in Macs work to get MyITLab to do what it's supposed to do. So I'll talk about those as we get into the regular semester. Okay, so let me switch back here. So in this case, to complete this item, right, they want me to start Word, right? So then that's the first thing it wants me to do. I want to insert, okay, so let's go ahead and blank document, okay, and then I'll do an insert, and it'll want me to do a file, so it says insert the text. So where I'm going to go here, I'm going to go insert, and I'm going to say, I have to remember too, by the way. Oh, so this is perfect. Actually, even though I suddenly realized where it was, right? So you're going to insert text from somewhere. So let's say you don't know, because it took me a little while there to remember where to go. So what you would do here is you do learning aids, and you do practice. And then practice would actually show you what you need to do. Okay, insert. I know you think I did this on purpose. I kind of did, but I did honestly forget. Okay, so that practice does not count towards completing it, but it allows you then to do it, right? So insert right here, file, there we go. So now when I do that, notice it does the next step. So down here in the bottom it shows each step, okay? So what I'm going to do here is I'm not going to complete all of them. When you complete them, which by the way will take you to the next one, and notice there's 17. You can also click here to see which 17 there are and which ones you've completed. You can see I haven't attempted them. Okay, so I'm going to hit save real quick. So here's what you can know is that you can take the trainings as many times as you want. And again, we'll talk about later benefits of doing that, but it's really the exams, right? It's the assessments that you need to do here. So if I go into Word 1, Chapter 1, it's basically the same thing. I've set it up honestly this way for a reason, because if you walk through the training, this should be easy. You should be, and matter of fact, notice it looks identical, right? It looks just like the training. And actually notice this, the training aids are here. So really, this is the work. How do you learn in this environment is time on task. In other words, if you're willing to spend the time to learn this thing, and then when you go and do it, and actually we'll end up doing that in the lab exams, then you'll really understand Word, Excel, and Access at a deeper level, okay? So again, I'm going to go back here. I'm going to hit save because I didn't do anything, right? And I actually didn't even show me. It did show me here in progress. Okay, so in your notes, hopefully you got some notes about those concepts that I covered, right? So in here we talked about trainings and exams. We talked about how you get set up with the MyITLab, right? So we talked about going through Blackboard to get set up in there, right? We talked about the 14-day trial. Let me come back here. We talked about the 14-day trial. So one really important part, and this needs to go in your notes like everything else, but is that when you're, hopefully you won't, but if you do experience challenges with MyITLab, a part of what you've paid for here is their support. So you need to reach out to them, and I will have provided support numbers by the time you get in here to contact them whenever you're running into challenges, okay? Now, there'll be other ways that I'll show you as we get further into this classwork that you can get help. But in this case, remember, and this goes in your notes, MyITLab is your first line of support when running into challenges with completing the items. Because obviously, having said that, I've seen students run into some challenges, and sometimes what it is they're trying to do something and they're not reading the content. That actually is the number one thing that I've seen, is they're not reading. Like, I wasn't reading and I forgot, so I did the practice, right? That's a very common thing. So practice or watch is a really nice way for it to show you, here's what you need to accomplish, okay? All right, so MyITLab, going back to the course, right? So what will happen, and right now, because it's not all set up, you're not going to see this, but what will happen is when you've completed this within 90, sorry you guys, I just realized I had the wrong screen there, is that within 90 minutes, that information will flow from MyITLab into Blackboard, okay? And then you'll see it show up here, right? But again, this is something you complete in MyITLab. It shows up in Blackboard. There's really nothing you have to do in Blackboard. It just shows up here, okay? Let's see, what else about MyITLab? Let's go back to MyITLab so I can talk about the other things in here, okay? MyITLab, we talked about Word. So Excel, same thing, training and assessments. Access, same thing. So when we get to the first lab assignment, you'll go down to exams, and they're already listed here. You'll have Office Lab exams, okay? Let me increase the text just a little bit here. So here's your first lab exam. So in this case, when you're actually doing lab exams, these require that you download a starter file. Okay, so you're going to download some files. In this case, I'm just going to download them all in zip. I recommend you putting them on a zip drive if you're not complete wherever you're working. I'm going to just go ahead and do this. A zip file, hopefully you've done this, but you extract them all. And they're going to go into downloads. And now, so how can I tell which one's downloaded and which one's unzipped? Okay, the way you can tell is that the extract all only shows up if you're looking at a zip file. Once you've unzipped them, then you see the actual directory listing here, okay? So here's what you do. Here's your instruction, right? So this is common to what we do with the other lab tests as well. You download some starting documents. Hopefully this is going in your notes. You do the work based on the instruction, and then you put the file back in MyITLab. Okay, so while we're waiting for Word to come up here, this is what you can see. Yeah, we'll get out of this for now. Okay, so by the way, this is where too you actually are no longer doing the simulated environment. There we go. You are no longer doing simulation. You are actually having Microsoft Word open. This is why acquiring Word is important in this case, because you actually need Word to complete it. Okay, so you do all the steps here. Tells you even how many points you have, and then you submit this back in. Let me go back here and show you. So then you'll, oh, not here. There we go. So then what you'll do is upload the file, right? So you upload the file once you're done. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just hit return to course, which is fine because I just started and I haven't done anything with it. So the last thing I want to just show you in MyITLab is you'll end up having the final in here as well. The final, the chapter quizzes will be done in Blackboard, but the final will be done in MyITLab for reporting purposes for us. But the other thing you'll want MyITLab for is the all-important ebook, and that we will finish with today. So here's the textbook. It may say something different when you come in, just know it's the first thing listed. You do have the PowerPoints for each chapter, which is awesome, right? And then you have the ebook. They do give it to you in different ways. I was able to actually open this on my Android as well, or my iPad. So if I just do eText, and I come in here, click here, hopefully this works, is that this is the textbook, okay? So in your notes, MyITLab is the place where you work on learning Microsoft Office, but it's also the location for the e-textbook, okay? So in this case, here we go, Chapter 1. What's cool about this, and I'll come back to this when we talk about chapter quizzes next, because this is how you can use the ebook to work on the chapter quizzes. All right, I think my time's up, so that is all I have for this particular one. Peace